What happens when a simple anniversary celebration turns into public humiliation? I thought inviting my ex would be harmless fun, a way to test my husband's attention. But when he smiled and calmly told me to leave, I realized the joke had ended, and the consequences were only beginning. My name is Isolde Maren, 34, and I always believed I knew how to get what I wanted. I was married to Gideon, a man who kept everything orderly, calm, and safe, the kind of husband people admired from the outside. We had a daughter, Lila, and a life that looked perfect. But to me, it felt dull, predictable, and suffocating. I told myself I deserved excitement, attention, and the thrill of being desired. Then Tristan returned. My ex-boyfriend, charismatic and bold, appeared suddenly in my life again. Seeing him stirred old feelings, curiosity, and a dangerous sense of rebellion. I told myself it was harmless, a simple invitation to our anniversary dinner to see how Gideon would react, to test him. I rationalized it every way I could. Gideon was distant, too serious, and had forgotten how to keep our life interesting. I needed a reminder of the world outside our marriage. Laughter, flirtation, even a little chaos, I told myself, would fix everything. I didn't realize then that one evening, one decision to invite Tristan would ignite a chain of events I could never control. That night I learned how quickly laughter and charm can turn into evidence and consequences that no amount of justification can undo. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The anniversary dinner started with a sense of excitement I hadn't felt in months. I had spent the afternoon preparing the house, setting the table with candles and arranging flowers, just so. I wanted everything to look perfect. The kind of elegance that would show everyone that I could handle charm, grace, and control all at once. But there was one detail that made my heart race more than the table settings or the menu. Tristan would be there. My ex. Back in my life for the first time in years. I told Gideon it was harmless, just a small surprise to add fun to our anniversary. He raised an eyebrow, his usual cautious expression in place, but he didn't refuse. I smiled, taking his silence as permission. It wasn't about him saying yes or no. It was about the thrill of watching him react to see if he could handle the unexpected. Guests began arriving, friends and family who had been part of our lives for years. I welcomed them, poured wine, laughed easily, and made small jokes, keeping everything light. Tristan arrived later, grinning, his presence commanding the room. He leaned close to me, whispered a few words that made me laugh and flush, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. Every glance at Gideon, who was sitting stiffly across the room, made my pulse quicken. As dinner began, Tristan's playful energy became impossible to ignore. He made jokes about Gideon's seriousness, lightly nudged him while telling stories, and I laughed too loudly, encouraging the moment. It's just harmless fun, I told myself, framing it in my mind as playful teasing rather than humiliation. I glanced at Gideon, expecting a flicker of amusement, a smile, anything, but he stayed still, calm, his expression unreadable. The tension in the room thickened, though I refused to acknowledge it. Lila, our daughter, sat quietly coloring at the edge of the table. Her small eyes flicked between us, curious and wary. I told myself she wouldn't understand the playful dynamics, that she would see only laughter and fun. But there was a hesitation in her movements that I ignored, focusing instead on the thrill of Tristan leaning closer, whispering words that made me blush, and my laughter echoing too loud. Tristan's gestures grew bolder. He lightly bumped Gideon's shoulder, laughing as if it were a joke. Everyone else froze for a moment. I laughed again, more loudly this time, trying to fill the silence and show that nothing was serious. Relax. It's just a joke, I said, but the sound of my own voice felt off, too loud, too forced. Gideon's eyes found mine. For the first time all evening, I saw a look I couldn't read. Not anger, not sadness, something heavier, deeper, that made my stomach twist. I tried to smile, telling myself I could charm my way out of this. "Don't be so serious," I whispered to him, still laughing. He didn't respond, only adjusted his posture slightly and folded his hands in front of him, calm but unyielding. I felt a pang of worry but ignored it, turning my attention back to Tristan, who continued joking and leaning close to me. I encouraged it, laughing along, trying to maintain control. I convinced myself this was a test for Gideon, a playful challenge to prove he could loosen up, that he could see the humor in life again. But deep down, a small, stubborn part of me wondered if I had gone too far. Then it happened. Tristan reached for Gideon's hand while telling a story, pretending to slap it lightly. The contact was firmer than intended, and the sound of it made my heart skip. My laughter rang out, uncontrollable, echoing around the dining room. Everyone else froze. Lila pulled her coloring close to her chest and hid her face behind the table. Nora and Marlene, my sister and mother-in-law, exchanged sharp, concerned looks. I tried to recover, telling myself it was still a joke, that Damien would see it as harmless fun. "See?" I said, forcing a smile. "It's just playful. Don't overreact." Tristan laughed nervously, sensing the shift in the room. But Gideon's expression didn't change. He sat upright, eyes fixed on me, and the air around him seemed heavier than ever. Without a word he stood. The chair scraped against the floor in the silence, startling in its quiet. "Enjoy your dinner," he said, voice steady and calm. Then he walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. I froze, unable to speak. The energy I had been feeding on, the laughter and flirtation, seemed to drain from the room instantly. Guests looked at me with awkward discomfort, and I realized I had lost control. I tried to smile, to convince everyone it was still fine, but it came out hollow. After the dinner, I stayed behind, cleaning the table, pouring another glass of wine for myself. I tried to tell myself Damien would come back, that he was just being dramatic, that this was a temporary reaction. I rehearsed excuses in my head. It was just a joke. Tristan didn't mean anything. I wasn't really flirting. But each thought felt weaker than the last. By the time I went to bed, Damien's car was gone, and the house was silent. A small note sat on the kitchen counter, written in his neat hand. "Don't wait up." I stared at it, my pulse racing, trying to rationalize the situation. I told myself it was one moment, one evening gone wrong, that he would return tomorrow, and we could laugh about it together. But lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt a chill in my chest that told me this night had changed everything, and the consequences of my laughter were only beginning. The morning after the anniversary dinner, the house felt empty, in a way I hadn't expected. Damien's side of the bed was undisturbed, his shoes were gone from the mat, and his briefcase sat neatly in the corner. I told myself he must have gone to his mother's to think that he needed space, that it wasn't permanent. But the silence pressed against my chest, insistent and heavy, a warning I tried to ignore. At the bakery, I forced myself to act normal. Students and co-workers noticed my distracted mood. Tristan, ever the performer, leaned over my desk, whispering a joke about the previous night. I laughed too quickly, too loudly, trying to convince myself and everyone else that it had been harmless. "He's just too serious," I said, forcing a grin. Tristan smirked, leaning closer, saying something about how people can't handle fun. I nodded, feeling the thrill of his attention, but underneath, unease settled like a weight I couldn't shake. During lunch, I overheard a few co-workers whispering behind their hands. "Did you hear about the dinner?" one said. She laughed while he looked furious. Poor guy. My stomach tightened. I smiled politely and walked past, pretending I didn't hear, pretending that the laughter I had enjoyed and justified wasn't the spark that had ignited everything. Ivy called later that afternoon. "He hasn't come home," I whispered. She was quiet for a moment. "He called me last night," she said finally. "Said he was at Mom's. Didn't say much else." "Why tell you and not me?" I asked, frustration bubbling. "I don't know," she said softly. "Maybe he wants space." I refused to accept it. "He's just embarrassed. He'll come back once he cools off." That evening, I texted Damien again. "You made everyone uncomfortable. We could have handled this privately." No reply. I sent another. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke." Still nothing. Each silence felt heavier than the laughter I had encouraged during dinner, each moment a reminder of the tension I had dismissed. Tristan noticed my nervous energy. "You're not okay," he said, leaning against the counter. I told him it was nothing, just tiredness, but he didn't believe me. He stayed close, whispering words that made me feel wanted, that reassured me temporarily, though deep down I knew it was only a distraction from the storm I had caused. By midweek, a formal envelope arrived at my door. I tore it open with shaking hands. It was from Damien's lawyer. Temporary custody arrangements, financial adjustments, and instructions regarding the house were laid out in crisp legal language. My hands trembled as I read. This was real. Damien had acted quietly, systematically, and deliberately. My laughter, my charm, my confidence, none of it mattered anymore. I tried calling him. No answer. I left long voicemails pleading for dialogue, attempting to frame myself as a victim of misunderstanding. A few hours later, an automated reply confirmed my fear. All communication regarding personal matters must go through legal counsel. My stomach twisted. Damien was serious. He wasn't angry in a way I could manipulate. He was precise, methodical, and unshakable. I considered taking action. I drafted emails to friends and coworkers, trying to frame Damien as controlling, exaggerating his harshness, and painting myself as the victim. But even as I typed, I realized the futility. He had prepared for this carefully, and I had no evidence to counter him. Every line of the documents, every clause, every instruction reminded me that I was powerless. Thursday morning brought another notice. Additional protections, exclusive residence rights for Damien, formal visitation schedules for Lila, and further financial restrictions. Each word in the official document felt like a weight pressing down, confirmation that he had thought of every angle, that no amount of charm or justification could undo the measures he had taken. By Friday, my frustration and fear collided. I decided to confront him at his office, rehearsing arguments, pleas, apologies. I walked in, heart pounding, only to be told by the receptionist that he was unavailable. 2 security guards appeared politely but firmly, blocking my path. "Ma'am, you need to leave," one said. I laughed nervously, masking the panic. "You're serious?" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Maren asked us to prevent disturbances." I left, humiliated, my chest tight, realizing that Damien's calm strategy, his quiet precision, was more powerful than any shouting, pleading, or argument could have been. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to threaten. He had already won. That night, I sat alone, clutching the custody and financial documents. My mind raced, replaying the dinner, Tristan's playful nudges, my own laughter. Each memory now felt like evidence stacked against me, each moment of justification exposing me further. The life I had once believed I controlled was slipping away, and I had no tools left to stop it. For the first time, I understood the truth I had been avoiding. The laughter that had seemed harmless had consequences far beyond what I had imagined. Damien's silence, his calculated actions, and his methodical planning had quietly undone everything I had relied on: charm, humor, and the illusion of control. The game was over, and I had lost. By the following week, the weight of what had happened at the anniversary dinner settled heavily on me. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper reminders of my choices: Tristan's grin, Gideon's silent exit, Lila's quiet confusion. I told myself I could still fix this, that a well-chosen word or a carefully timed apology could bring him back. But the letters, the legal notices, and the silence all screamed otherwise. At work, I tried to maintain composure, smiling at coworkers, attending to customers, arranging flowers as usual. But Tristan noticed my distraction immediately. "You look tense," he said, leaning close over the counter. I waved it off with a laugh, saying it was nothing, just stress from the anniversary dinner still lingering. He smirked knowingly, his attention both comforting and dangerous. Every time he whispered a joke or compliment, I felt the old thrill of rebellion. It was temporary relief, though I sensed the danger behind it. Later that day, I received a brief text from Gideon. "Keep your public image in mind. You'll understand later." My chest tightened. I wanted to respond, to argue, to plead, but I didn't. I stared at the message, realizing the control I thought I had was slipping fast. That evening, the school held a small exhibition for Lila's artwork. I decided to attend, telling myself I could demonstrate composure and charm, proving to Gideon and the guests that I was still in control. Ivy came along, quiet but observant, her eyes flicking nervously between me and Tristan. I didn't warn her that he would be there, the thought of Tristan's presence thrilling and terrifying all at once. The gallery buzzed with families, friends, and teachers. I moved among the guests, complimenting students, pretending to focus on the artwork, forcing light laughter and casual conversation. Then I saw Tristan. He leaned against a wall, wine glass in hand, smiling like he owned the room. He whispered something in my ear that made me laugh softly, the old excitement and danger returning, even as a part of me quivered with anxiety. And then Gideon entered, calm, quiet, observing from the entrance. For a fleeting moment, I imagined he might come toward me, that he might see my remorse, that he could be softened. I smiled and waved slightly. He nodded once, eyes scanning the room, calm but piercing, no trace of warmth. Tristan noticed immediately. "Guess he's not done yet," he whispered. I told him to stop, but he moved closer to Gideon, still teasing, still confident. They shook hands, stiff and formal. Tristan gave a light pat on Gideon's shoulder, grinning, ignoring the uncomfortable glances from the parents nearby. I laughed along, trying to frame it as a joke, but the laughter felt hollow even to me. I attempted to steer the situation, smiling wider, speaking louder, encouraging banter, trying to convince everyone, including myself, that it was harmless fun. But the tension had already shifted. I saw the parents' looks, the whispered conversations, and Ivy's uneasy expression. The thrill of Tristan's attention now felt like a knife twisting inside. By the end of the exhibition, Gideon quietly took Lila and left. I considered following, calling out, pleading, but he didn't glance back. The calm authority he carried was suffocating, impossible to challenge. My laughter, once a tool of manipulation and charm, now seemed like a marker of my recklessness. Returning home that night, I found an envelope on the porch. The official seal immediately made my hands tremble. Inside were copies of temporary custody orders, bank restrictions, and property arrangements. Every detail confirmed what I had feared. Gideon had acted quietly, methodically, and legally. My control, my laughter, my charm, all meaningless against his deliberate planning. I called Ivy immediately. "He's really doing it," I whispered. "I told you," she said softly. "You pushed him too far." I couldn't respond. My mind reeled, replaying the anniversary dinner, Tristan's nudges, my laughter, and the stunned silence afterward. Every decision I had justified as harmless now felt like evidence stacked against me. In the following days, I considered my options. I drafted emails to friends, painting Gideon as controlling and harsh, hoping someone would take my side. I even contemplated approaching the school board to complain, subtly framing the situation as emotional harassment. But a quiet voice inside reminded me that he had already anticipated these moves. He had prepared for everything. Thursday brought another envelope. More legal measures, exclusive residence rights, formal visitation schedules, and additional financial protections. Every word and signature in the document felt like a wall I couldn't climb. I realized that no argument, no manipulation, no charm would undo what he had already built with calm precision. By Friday, I felt desperate. I went to his office, rehearsing every word I would say, hoping to reclaim some control. The receptionist informed me he was unavailable, and 2 security guards appeared, polite but firm, preventing my entry. "You need to leave," one said. I laughed nervously, masking the panic. "You're serious?" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Maren asked us to prevent disturbances." I left, humiliated, heart racing. Damien's calm strategy, his quiet, methodical approach, had stripped me of power. He didn't need to shout or threaten. He had already won. That night, I sat alone, clutching the custody and financial documents. I replayed the dinner, Tristan's playful nudges, my laughter, every excuse I had made. Each memory now felt like evidence, each choice exposing me further. For the first time, I understood the truth I had avoided. The laughter that had seemed harmless had consequences. Gideon's silence, his precise actions, and his unwavering strategy had quietly undone everything I had relied upon: charm, humor, and the illusion of control. The game was over, and I had lost. A few days later, Marlene called with an unusual calmness in her voice. She said Damien wanted to meet at her house to clarify things. I hesitated, my mind racing with excuses and justifications. I told myself I could charm him, smooth things over, and remind him of the life we once shared. I rehearsed apologies, careful to make them sound genuine but still preserve my pride. When I arrived, the house felt impossibly tidy. Marlene was setting out tea, her movements precise and controlled. Ivy sat stiffly on the sofa, eyes flicking nervously between me and Damien. He was already there, sitting across from them with a manila folder on the coffee table. His posture was straight, calm, and deliberate. I told myself calm meant he was open to discussion, that he was waiting for me to explain, to reason with him. "Thank you for coming," he said, his tone formal and steady. I forced a smile. "We don't need to make this formal. We can just talk." He nodded slightly, then opened the folder. Pages of printed messages, emails, and photographs slid across the table toward me. My stomach twisted. "What is all this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Evidence," he said simply. I didn't want to believe anything, so I gathered my own. I laughed nervously. "Evidence? You're making a scene out of nothing. This is ridiculous." He didn't react to my laughter. "It's not nothing. It's everything." I scanned the pages. Text messages between Tristan and me, jokes, flirtations, casual touches, all carefully documented and time-stamped. Photographs from the anniversary dinner, the bakery, and casual selfies that revealed too much closeness. Every line I had justified as harmless fun now stared back at me. "These are out of context," I said. "You're exaggerating. You're reading too much into things." Ivy spoke softly from the sofa. "Isolde, these aren't out of context. These are facts." I ignored her and turned back to Damien. "You've gone through everything. This is a violation of my privacy. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." He looked at me evenly. "It's all in accounts and messages we both have access to. You forgot that trust leaves traces." Marlene exhaled, folding her hands in her lap. "I warned you not to play with fire," she said. "You've always disliked me," I shot back sharply. "Don't pretend this is about protecting anyone. This is personal." "It's about protecting Lila," she said quietly but firmly. "She deserves parents who respect each other and their home." That word, respect, hit harder than I expected. You're treating me like a criminal, I whispered. I didn't cheat. I laughed at a moment. You're making it sound like I destroyed everything. Damien leaned forward slightly. It's not about a single moment. It's about the choices you made afterward. Every joke, every flirtation, every time you dismissed my feelings as controlling. My chest tightened. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic over nothing. He lifted another stack of papers. I've prepared carefully. I've consulted a lawyer. I've ensured Lila's safety, our finances, and our home will be protected. I wanted to laugh, to insist he was overreacting. My voice trembled. You can't erase 17 years with signatures on paper. He shook his head slowly. I'm not erasing 17 years. I'm enforcing the consequences of your choices. I stepped closer, desperate. We can fix this. I'll end things with Tristan. I'll do whatever it takes. We can be a family again. His expression didn't change. It's not about Tristan. It's about trust, respect, and the truth you refuse to see. I felt my hand shake, my stomach twist. So this is it? You really don't want to try? He nodded once. Trying ended the night you laughed while he humiliated me. That's when I learned who you really are. I realized then that no charm, no argument, no pleading could undo what had been done. My laughter, which had once been my weapon, had marked the end of the life I thought I controlled. Marlene intervened softly. That's enough. But I couldn't stop myself. You're making yourself look pathetic. People will think you're weak. Damien gathered the folder and stood. Maybe, but at least I will be honest. He turned and walked out, leaving the documents on the table. My heart pounded, and the weight of reality pressed down on me. I stared at the papers, knowing for the first time that the laughter I had justified had consequences far beyond what I had imagined. Ivy touched my arm gently. Isolde, this isn't a fight you can charm your way through, she whispered. I pulled away. He'll come back. He has to. But even as the words left my lips, I knew he wouldn't. The papers on the table, the silence of the house, and the calm certainty in Damien's actions told me everything I needed to know. The game was over, and I had lost. The days after the confrontation at Marlene's house were heavy with tension. I tried to convince myself that Damien's silence was temporary, that once he saw my remorse, everything would return to normal. But the envelopes kept arriving, each more formal and precise than the last. Temporary custody arrangements, financial restrictions, and property agreements were carefully detailed, leaving no room for negotiation. My hands shook as I read them. Damien had acted quietly, deliberately, and strategically, and there was no charm or excuse that could undo it. I called him several times, leaving long, carefully worded voicemails pleading for discussion. I framed myself as a victim of misunderstanding, blaming the situation, blaming Tristan, even attempting to suggest the kids needed our united presence. Hours later, I received an automated reply. All communication regarding personal matters must go through legal counsel. My stomach twisted. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't angry in a way I could manipulate or charm. He was precise, methodical, and utterly calm. At the bakery, Tristan noticed my distraction. He leaned close, whispering a joke, a compliment, something to make me feel special and wanted. I laughed along, though part of me knew it was temporary relief, a fleeting escape from the reality I faced. I wanted to cling to him as a lifeline, but deep down I knew he could not save me from what Damien had set in motion. By midweek, the first formal legal notices arrived at my door. I sat on the porch, hands trembling over the envelopes, reading the crisp documents. Temporary custody of Lila, frozen joint accounts, and instructions regarding the house were all spelled out in precise legal language. Every action Damien had taken was deliberate and measured. The control I thought I had over him, over our marriage, over my life, it was gone. I called Ivy immediately. He's really doing it, I whispered. I told you, she said softly. You pushed him too far. I couldn't respond. My mind reeled, replaying every moment that had led to this point. The anniversary dinner, Tristan's nudges, my laughter, my attempts to justify everything. Each memory now felt like evidence stacked against me, each choice exposing me further. That evening, I attempted to act. I drafted emails to friends and coworkers, subtly portraying Gideon as controlling and harsh. I even considered approaching the school board, trying to suggest emotional distress or harassment, hoping to sway sympathy to my side. But as I typed, I realized that Gideon had anticipated every move. He had covered every angle, every document, every precaution, every measure was carefully calculated. I had nothing left to challenge him with. Thursday morning brought another envelope, detailing additional legal protections, exclusive residence rights, visitation schedules, and further financial restrictions. Each word, each official stamp, was a reminder of how far-reaching his planning had been. He had thought of every contingency, every loophole, every argument I could make. My laughter, my charm, my illusions of control were meaningless against this quiet, methodical strategy. By Friday, desperation drove me to act. I walked to his office, rehearsing every argument, every plea, every carefully chosen word. I arrived, heart pounding, and told the receptionist I needed to see him immediately. She informed me he was unavailable, and 2 security guards appeared politely but firmly. "You need to leave," one said. I laughed nervously, masking panic. "You're serious?" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Maren asked us to prevent disturbances." I left, humiliated and shaking. Gideon's calm, deliberate actions terrified me more than any shouting, any pleading, any dramatic confrontation could have. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need threats. He had already won. That night, I sat alone in the empty house, clutching the custody and financial documents. Every word, every clause, every signature confirmed the truth I had been avoiding. Gideon had acted with precision and patience. My laughter, my attempts at justification, my insistence that I was the victim, all of it had failed. I was powerless. I replayed the anniversary dinner again and again in my mind. Tristan's playful nudges, my encouragement and laughter, the stunned silence afterward, Gideon's cold calm. Each moment felt like evidence of my undoing. Every choice I had, thought harmless, now marked me as reckless, manipulative, and irresponsible. For the first time, I understood that Gideon's silence and methodical preparation were far more powerful than any display of anger, argument, or charm I could muster. My life, as I had known it, was slipping away, quietly, legally, and completely. By the end of the week, I realized the full weight of my mistake. The laughter I had justified as harmless, the flirtation I had excused as playful, and the control I had believed I wielded had all failed me. Gideon had executed a calculated strategy with calm precision, quietly reclaiming his dignity, his household, and the future of our daughter. I was left alone, facing the consequences I had ignored for too long. The morning of the final handover arrived with a heavy, suffocating weight. I tried to convince myself I could still charm Gideon, that one last apology, one carefully chosen word, could sway him. I rehearsed lines in my head, phrases that would sound genuine, but still preserve my pride. I told myself this was my final opportunity to reclaim some control, to fix everything I had broken. When I arrived at the house, it felt smaller, colder, somehow alien. The blinds were drawn, the furniture rearranged, the walls stripped of photographs and mementos from our life together. Gideon's car was parked neatly in the driveway. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, and rang the doorbell. He opened the door, calm and precise, not alone. A woman in a professional suit held a clipboard, quietly observing. "This is Ms. Campbell," Gideon said. "She is here as a witness for the property and custody handover." I forced a smile, trying to mask my panic. "Do we really need a witness for this? Damien didn't respond verbally. He gestured toward the counter where a neat stack of documents lay, waiting. These are the final settlement papers. Once you sign, everything is concluded. I stepped closer, hands trembling. We don't have to do this now. We can talk, just the two of us. He shook his head slowly. Talking has not worked. This is the final step. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though my chest was tight. You're being harsh. You can't erase 17 years of marriage with signatures on paper. He looked at me evenly, eyes calm and unyielding. I'm not erasing 17 years. I'm closing a chapter that was already finished by your choices. I took a deep breath, hoping my words could somehow soften him. I can fix this. I'll end things with Tristan. I'll do whatever it takes. We can rebuild our life. His expression remained unchanged. It's not about Tristan anymore. It's about trust, respect, and the reality you refuse to see. I wanted to argue, to plead, but my voice caught in my throat. So this is it? You really don't want to try? He nodded once. Trying ended the night you laughed while he humiliated me. That's when I learned who you really are. I felt my chest tighten as I realized there was no reasoning, no charm, no manipulation that could undo the damage I had caused. My laughter, once my tool, had been the final proof of my recklessness. Marlene, sitting quietly in the corner, intervened softly. That's enough. But I couldn't stop myself. You're making yourself look weak. People will see you as pathetic. Damien gathered the folder and stood, calm and deliberate. Maybe, but at least I will be honest. He turned toward the door, leaving the documents and the keys on the counter. My eyes followed them, heavy with the realization of their significance. They represented my loss, my failures, and the life I had believed I controlled. I wanted to reach out, to beg, to plead for one last chance, but my legs refused to move. My throat was tight, my mind spinning with panic and disbelief. Take care of yourself, Isolde, Damien said quietly as he walked past me toward the door. I wanted to call after him, to stop him, to reclaim some shred of control, but my body remained frozen. He opened the front door, stepped outside, and walked down the driveway without a glance back. The soft click of the door closing echoed through the house, louder than any shouting, louder than any argument could have been. I remained rooted to the spot, staring at the empty room. The house smelled faintly of polish and paper, sterile and unwelcoming. I reached for the keys, hovering over them, but couldn't touch them. Metal, cold, and unyielding, yet carrying the weight of everything I had lost. I sat on the edge of the counter, trying to make sense of what had happened. Silence surrounded me, thick and suffocating. There was no yelling, no pleading, no confrontation, only calm, deliberate finality. Damien had acted with precision and quiet strength, leaving me powerless. For the first time, I understood the full consequences of my actions. Every joke I had encouraged, every flirtation I had justified, every moment I had laughed at the expense of my husband had led to this. Laughter, once my weapon, had become the evidence of my undoing. I whispered to the empty house, "You'll come back." But even as the words left my lips, I knew they were false. The door remained closed, the keys cold on the counter, and my life, as I had known it, was finished. The game I had thought I controlled was over, and I was left alone, facing the consequences of every choice I had made. I realized then that Damien's calm, methodical, and lawful approach had stripped me of the illusions I had relied on, charm, humor, and manipulation, leaving only the stark reality of my own reckless decisions. For the first time, I understood that some battles cannot be won with laughter, and some consequences cannot be avoided, no matter how clever or justified you think you are. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.